The most notorious serial killers in history. Chilling stories of evil minds. Serial killers have long fascinated and horrified us, embodying a darkness that exists just out of sight in our everyday world. But what exactly drives people to commit such disturbing acts? Is it something inherent in their nature, perhaps a psychological disorder? Or is it something darker that we may not fully understand? Some argue it's their upbringing, others point to mental illness, but the truth might be more complex. Today, we're diving deep into the chilling stories of some of the most infamous serial killers in history. From those who hid in plain sight, evading suspicion for years, to those who left behind trails of terror, each case forces us to confront the unsettling unknown. As we go through these dark and twisted tales, feel free to share your theories, thoughts, and ideas on what might have driven these individuals to commit such heinous acts. Which case do you find the most chilling and why? Let's get into it. 1. Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy, just hearing his name sends a shiver down your spine. A man who was known for his charm, good looks, and intelligence, Bundy was a law student with a promising future. But beneath his facade was a cold-blooded killer who murdered at least 30 women across multiple states in the 1970s. His ability to blend in, pretending to be someone he wasn't, helped him gain the trust of his victims. Bundy's modus operandi involved feigning injury to lure women into his trap, where he would then overpower them. His trial, which became the first to be nationally televised, captured the nation's attention as Bundy maintained his innocence throughout, even as overwhelming evidence pointed to him. It wasn't until just before his execution in 1989 that he confessed to his monstrous crimes. Bundy's story is a terrifying example of how appearances can be deceiving, how someone who seems so normal on the outside can carry out such horrific acts. What do you think shaped Bundy's desire to kill? Was it his personality, childhood trauma, or something more sinister? Was Bundy born evil, or did his environment push him to this point? 2. Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in criminal history. In 1888, between August and November, the Ripper murdered at least 5 women in the Whitechapel district of London, committing brutal and sadistic acts that shocked the world. Despite numerous investigations, the identity of the killer has never been conclusively determined, sparking a plethora of theories. Some argue the killer was a single person, while others suggest it could have been a group of individuals. The Ripper's eerie letters to the police, taunting them with cryptic messages, only deepened the public's fear. To this day, theories about who the Ripper could have been, from a royal conspirator to a doctor or a butcher, continue to capture our imaginations. Many suspect he could have been someone who knew the area well, or even someone from the medical field due to the precise nature of the murders. What's your theory on the Ripper's identity? Do you think he was someone close to the victims, or a stranger lurking in the shadows? Why do you think his crimes have remained unsolved for so long? 3. Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer, infamously known as the Milwaukee Cannibal, committed some of the most shocking and grotesque murders in modern history. Between 1978 and 1991, Dahmer lured young men to his apartment, where he drugged, murdered, and dismembered them. He would keep parts of his victims as trophies, even going as far as to engage in necrophilia and cannibalism. Dahmer's case raises complex questions about the human mind. Was he born this way, or were his dark tendencies shaped by his upbringing and past experiences? His chillingly calm demeanor during police interviews and his ability to maintain a facade of normalcy for so many years are unsettling. Dahmer grew up in a troubled household, with reports of him being neglected and isolated. His ability to compartmentalize his horrific actions for so many years is something that continues to baffle experts. What do you think drove Dahmer to kill in such a methodical and grotesque way? Was it his experiences growing up, his mental health, or something else entirely? Let's dive into the mind of this terrifying killer. 4. Aileen Wuornos. Aileen Wuornos, one of America's few female serial killers, was responsible for the deaths of 7 men in Florida between 1989 and 1990. Her case is tragic and complex, with many questioning whether Wuornos was a victim of her circumstances or a cold-blooded killer. Wuornos was a prostitute who claimed she murdered these men in self-defense, while others believe she took pleasure in killing. Her troubled childhood, abusive relationships, and difficult life choices make it hard to see her as anything but a victim of the system. But the question remains, did she kill to survive, or was she truly evil? Her story is one of survival in a world that mistreated her, but also one of deep psychological scars. Wuornos's troubled relationship with men and her violent outbursts suggest a complex psyche. What do you think? Did society create Aileen Wuornos? Or was her mind already twisted before she turned to murder? Was she a victim of circumstance, or was there something darker inside her all? 5. John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown, led a double life that shocked the nation. Known for his involvement in local Chicago politics and his role as a performer at children's parties, Gacy was not the man anyone would have suspected. In the 1970s, he lured at least 33 young men and boys into his home, where he would torture, rape, and murder them before burying them in the crawl space. Despite his disturbing behavior, Gacy managed to evade suspicion for years, maintaining a public image as a well-liked community member. Gacy's charming demeanor was in stark contrast to the monstrous acts he committed. He even invited police to his home during their investigation, giving them no reason to suspect him. How was he able to keep up the facade for so long, and what drove him to kill in such a methodical and monstrous way? Was it a desire for power or something more insidious? What would cause someone to live such a dual life, hiding such a deep darkness behind a mask of normalcy? Let's explore the dark side of Gacy's life and mind. 6. Ed Gein. Ed Gein, though not as prolific as some other killers, is infamous for the grotesque nature of his crimes. Known for creating masks, furniture, and clothing from the body parts of his victims, Gein's twisted legacy inspired some of the most iconic horror films, including Psycho and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Gein's obsession with his deceased mother and his desire to create a woman from the bodies of his victims give us a glimpse into the mind of a killer unlike any other. What's particularly disturbing about Gein is the level of psychological pathology at play. He was obsessed with the idea of reanimating his mother, which led him to commit these grotesque acts. What do you think would lead someone to develop such bizarre obsessions? Was it a deep-seated trauma, or something else entirely? Gein's crimes were not just about murder. They were about something much darker and more disturbing. His legacy has had an undeniable impact on pop culture and our understanding of the darker aspects of the human psyche. 7. Richard Ramirez. The Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, struck fear into the hearts of Californians in the mid-1980s with his string of violent home invasion murders. Ramirez showed no remorse for his actions and often left behind satanic symbols at the scenes of his crimes. His cold, remorseless demeanor during his trial was chilling, and his lack of empathy raises the question, what drives someone to such evil? Ramirez's obsession with Satanism and his apparent belief that he was following some higher power make his crimes particularly unsettling. Was Ramirez's obsession with Satanism a result of his troubled upbringing, or did it reflect deeper psychological issues? What do you think made him believe he was destined to kill in such a violent and demonic way? Let's discuss what might have been the driving force behind his chilling spree. 8. Albert Fish. Albert Fish, known as the Gray Man, was a sadistic cannibal who targeted young children in the 1920s. His horrific crimes, which included kidnapping, torturing, and killing his victims, shocked the nation. Even more disturbing were the letters Fish sent to the families of his victims, describing in graphic detail the horrors he had inflicted upon their loved ones. Fish was a man consumed by depravity, and his disturbing sexual fetishes only added to the horror of his actions. How can a man like Fish exist in society? What makes someone so depraved? And how do we as a society handle such extreme evil? Fish's sadistic nature and his ability to manipulate those around him are chilling examples of the darkest aspects of human nature. 9. Andrei Chikatilo. Andrei Chikatilo, the Butcher of Rostov, was a Soviet serial killer who brutally murdered 52 people, mostly women and children, between 1978 and 1990. His reign of terror ended in 1994, when he was finally caught and executed. Chikatilo's case highlights the flaws in Soviet-era law enforcement, as he evaded capture for over a decade despite his brutal killing spree. His crimes were particularly horrific because he would often mutilate his victims, and his compulsive need to kill seemed unrelenting. What drove Chikatilo to commit such horrific acts? Was it his childhood, his sexual frustration, or the repressive nature of Soviet society? His case also reveals how societal structures and law enforcement can sometimes fail to stop killers, even when they leave behind a trail of bodies. What do you think allowed Chikatilo to continue his killing spree for so long without being caught? 10. David Berkowitz. David Berkowitz, known as the Son of Sam, terrorized New York City in the late 1970s with a series of shootings that left 6 people dead and several others injured. Berkowitz claimed that he was ordered to kill by a demon that appeared in the form of a dog, leading to his bizarre defense during trial. His case sparked public panic and media frenzy, with many people questioning the true motive behind his killings. Was Berkowitz truly influenced by outside forces, or was he simply a mentally disturbed individual using the story of the demon as an excuse? His strange defense raised questions about the nature of evil and whether people are driven to commit horrific acts due to external forces or because of personal psychological instability. Do you think Berkowitz was genuinely influenced by a supernatural entity, or was it all part of his attempt to justify his actions? 11. Harold Shipman. Dr. Harold Shipman, also known as Dr. Death, was one of the most prolific serial killers in history, responsible for the deaths of over 200 patients in the UK. What makes Shipman's case so chilling is that he was trusted by his victims. He was a doctor who had access to their medical records, medications, and ultimately, their lives. Shipman used his medical knowledge to inject lethal doses of morphine into his victims, many of whom were elderly women. The fact that someone in a position of trust could commit such heinous acts is a terrifying reminder of how evil can sometimes wear the guise of respectability. How do we ensure patient safety when the threat is hidden within the very institutions meant to protect us? Shipman's ability to evade detection for so long underscores the dangers of complacency and how the most trusted figures in society can sometimes turn out to be the most dangerous. Dennis Rader, also known as the BTK Killer, terrorized the Wichita, Kansas area for decades before he was finally caught in 2005. His modus operandi was to bind, torture, and kill his victims, sending taunting letters to the police and media to boast about his crimes. Rader's case is particularly disturbing because of the chilling precision with which he operated, evading capture for 30 years. His letters, which detailed the gruesome nature of his crimes, kept law enforcement on edge for years. What makes killers like Rader so dangerous is not just their ability to evade capture, but their need for control and attention. Rader's meticulous planning and taunting letters raise the question: what drives this need for control? And why do some killers crave the spotlight while others remain in the shadows? What do you think makes someone like Rader so obsessed with control over their victims and over the investigation itself? Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, is believed to have killed at least 49 women over a span of 2 decades in the Seattle area. Ridgway's long, deadly spree raises unsettling questions about how such killers manage to evade detection for so long. What's particularly chilling about Ridgway is how ordinary he appeared. He was a married man with a steady job, and yet he managed to lead a double life, murdering women in a methodical and almost cold-blooded way. Ridgway's ability to blend into society while carrying out such horrific acts is a chilling reminder that evil can exist right under our noses. Do you think Ridgway's ordinary facade was key to his success in evading capture, or did he simply take advantage of the weaknesses in the investigation? How did he manage to evade law enforcement for so long, and what allowed him to keep killing without getting caught? Pedro Alonso Lopez, the monster of the Andes, is suspected of killing over 300 young girls in Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru during the 1970s. His horrifying confessions sent shockwaves across South America, but even more disturbing was the fact that he was later released from prison due to a technicality. Lopez's case raises significant questions about justice and how societies can protect themselves from killers when the justice system fails. His release after serving just 14 years for his crimes is a glaring example of how the justice system can sometimes fail to keep dangerous criminals off the streets. What do you think can be done to prevent such killers from evading justice? And how can countries improve their legal systems to ensure that individuals like Lopez don't go free to continue their reign of terror? Henry Lee Lucas claimed responsibility for hundreds of murders across the United States, although many of his confessions remain unverified. Lucas's life of violence and deception leaves a murky legacy that continues to puzzle investigators. Some believe that Lucas may have been a compulsive liar who exaggerated his crimes, while others argue that he may have been telling the truth in some cases. His ability to manipulate investigators and his frequent confessions make his case particularly complex. What do you think? Was Lucas a compulsive liar, or was he telling the truth about his involvement in these murders? How can law enforcement determine the truth in such a complicated and ambiguous case, where so many of the facts are in dispute? 16. Ed Kemper. Ed Kemper, the co-ed killer, committed a series of brutal murders in the early 1970s, including killing his own mother. What makes Kemper's case particularly fascinating is his ability to articulate his thoughts and emotions. During interviews, he displayed a remarkable level of self-awareness, fully understanding the horrors he had committed. His calm demeanor and chilling insight into his own crimes offer a rare glimpse into the mind of a serial killer who can look back at his actions with clarity. What can we learn from killers like Kemper, who openly discuss their motives and actions? Does his self-awareness make him more frightening, or does it reveal a deeper understanding of his own pathology? 17. H.H. Holmes. H.H. Holmes, one of America's first serial killers, operated a murder castle in Chicago in the late 1800s. This maze-like hotel was designed specifically to trap and kill his victims. Holmes would lure young women into his hotel, where they would often disappear, never to be seen again. His case remains one of the most horrifying examples of calculated evil. How could someone create such a twisted place with the sole purpose of killing people? What made Holmes believe he could get away with such crimes for so long? Was it his charisma and cunning that allowed him to evade detection, or was it the sheer audacity of his actions? Holmes's ability to hide in plain sight while committing such atrocities is a chilling reminder of how evil can sometimes operate under the radar, hiding behind the mask of normalcy. 18. Belle Gunness. Belle Gunness, the Black Widow of LaPorte, was a woman who lured men to her farm in Indiana in the early 1900s, only to kill them for their insurance money. Her story is shrouded in mystery, and it's even possible that she faked her own death to escape justice. Gunness is believed to have killed several men, as well as her children, before disappearing. The true extent of her crimes may never be known. Did she escape justice, or was her body one of the victims found in her burned-down home? Gunness's ability to manipulate people and hide her dark secret behind a facade of normalcy raises the question: what drives someone to commit murder for money, and how does she continue to evade suspicion for so long? 19. Peter Sutcliffe. Peter Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper, terrorized northern England in the late 1970s, killing 13 women and injuring many others. His reign of terror sparked widespread fear, but what made Sutcliffe's case particularly tragic was the repeated failures of law enforcement to catch him. The police investigation was marred by numerous mistakes, and it wasn't until Sutcliffe made a mistake and was apprehended in 1981 that his killing spree came to an end. How do repeated failures in tracking serial killers shape public trust in law enforcement? Do you think Sutcliffe's case could have been solved sooner, or was the nature of the crime simply too complex to catch him earlier? 20. The Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac Killer, who terrorized California during the late 1960s and early 1970s, is one of the most infamous and elusive serial killers in history. Known for sending cryptic letters and ciphers to the media, the Zodiac taunted police for years, claiming several victims. His true identity remains unknown to this day, and his cryptic messages continue to spark new theories about his motives and identity. What's your take on the Zodiac's motives? Was he simply a thrill killer, or did his cryptic letters reveal something deeper? Could he still be alive? And if so, what is the possibility that we might ever find out who he really was? Each of these killers is a chilling reminder of humanity's darker side. The terrifying diversity of motives and methods behind their acts shows how fragile the line is between ordinary life and evil. Some killers were driven by deep psychological issues, while others operated with a calculated and chilling precision that defies understanding. As we explore the minds behind these heinous acts, we are forced to confront uncomfortable questions about human nature and the capacity for evil. Are serial killers born, or are they made by the circumstances of their lives? What drives someone to commit such horrific acts, and what does it say about our society that some of these killers evaded justice for so long? These stories leave us with more questions than answers. But they also serve as reminders of the need for vigilance and the importance of understanding the psychology behind such violence. The cases we've explored today not only highlight the horror of what these killers did, but also challenge us to think about how we can prevent similar tragedies in the future. As we reflect on these chilling stories, it's important to remember the victims, who are often lost in the shadow of the killers who took their lives. Behind every case is a person whose life was cut short in a horrific way, and it's their stories we must also honor. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the minds of history's most notorious serial killers. If you enjoyed this journey into the darkness of the human psyche, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell. Stay tuned for more mysterious and unsolved cases that we'll explore next time. Until then, stay curious, stay safe, and if you have a topic suggestion, drop it in the comments. We're always looking for new stories to unravel with you.